Did she speak to you or just to me?
To all of us, we have to
Oh.
Everyone.
Oh, I don't know that I've had that happen before.
Yeah. It says recording in progress, and then we all have a prompt that says this meeting is being written, and we have to click got it, which shout out to the UX tech writer that came up with that.
They're like, make it simple so they know what it means.
So I do like the thought that everyone, including Zoom, wants to be involved tonight.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you all so much for coming to our May STC Florida chapter meeting. We're very honored to have Lori Meyer presenting in a little bit on TechComm through the generations. I know she gave a version of this presentation to the Future Technical Communicators Club, and it got rave reviews from what I saw in their survey results. So I'm very excited to hear what she has to say because I missed it the first time. But before we get into that, we have our elections for chapter office coming up very shortly. Alex, I don't know if you want to say a little bit about that as our nominating chair.
Sure. It was a pleasure being able to find very qualified people for our slate, for our office, and I'm really glad that everybody was able to step up, and I'm hopeful for the future of our chapter. The election should start on June 14th and will go until June 24th, and then we will have our installation on a special Friday chapter meeting, Friday, June 25th. And that will be our end of the year banquet, virtual banquet. Bring your own drinks and food.
Turn off your camera so you can eat.
Exactly.
Or Jessica, you could eat on camera, which I have done unawares before. It's a humbling experience.
But yeah, today I thought that we would give the slate a chance to kind of introduce themselves and let you know their collective vision for the chapter.
Okay, great. I think I volunteered to be up first because I am running for STC Florida chapter president. I would like to point out, I hope you'll vote for me. I am running unopposed, as is everyone else here, but still, your vote does matter. And we're very excited to have a full slate of officers this year. I know that has been a struggle before. So I also want to thank everyone who stepped up this year to serve in chapter office. It means a lot that you're willing to put your time and energy into our chapter. And I think you'll find it's time that's well spent. I think I'm going on 10 years with the Florida chapter now, and it's been a wild ride. I've had a great time serving in lots of different offices. I have been Florida chapter president before, and I would have maybe stayed longer, but I answered the call for STC board service for 2 years, and that time is coming to an end. I had my last board meeting just ending at 6:15, so I'm happy to be having the opportunity to come back to chapter leadership and work more closely with everybody. Not that I ever really went away. I was always here supporting everyone in the chapter. But I guess a little bit for those who maybe don't know me as well, I have my degree in English Technical Communication. Well, 2 degrees from UCF, bachelor's and master's. I knew early on that I wanted to do TechComm, which I think is a rarity, but my mom has always said that it was always destined to be. I used to keep records of my Barbie dolls, little ledgers where I would write out their names, likes, dislikes, catalog their wardrobe. I still have them. It's a very strange thing to have done at like 8, but it all makes sense now because I thought. Yes, I knew what mattered to me and putting things down.
You were building personas, huh?
Yes, exactly.
Use cases.
They weren't all named Barbie because that would not have been a very good, user story to work from. So I'm just saying, not that everyone always knows they're going to be a TechComm, but for me, it just kind of always felt like the right path. So yeah, I love what we do as technical communicators. I love to talk shop about grammar, mechanics. Jessica and I talk about Madcap Flair. I love talking tools. But when it comes to returning to Florida chapter leadership, the things I really want to focus on are continuing to remain connected virtually, even as we move back towards having some events in person, which I know have been terribly missed. I miss eating food with people in person. I don't want to eat food with you virtually. I'm sorry. I love you all dearly, but I don't think you want to watch me eat. I'm not very ladylike. But in person, it's forgivable. So I look forward to having the chance to actually see some people in person, but remaining available and connected virtually, especially for our wonderfully engaged virtual members like Lori. Meyer and Lori Corbett, both Loris, and just building out our program for the year early so that we have a predictable schedule of events. I'm very excited. We have a vice president who's going to be working with us on that, so that we have, a full expectation for what we're going to do in the chapter year, and just continuing to see what things can we do differently, what can we, build on to. We know things that work really well. Our active membership program, our administrative council works really well together. I think we're great at getting along. It's a wonderful community to be in. I've always felt welcomed, and I hope everyone here has as well. And just see where do we have room to grow, because I think it's a great time to kind of, as we're all emerging back into the world, as the pandemic isn't over, but at least is becoming more manageable. I'm not sure exactly what all we're going to do, but I look forward to working with everyone to prioritize what we think is going to be best for the community, and what is going to help us not just retain the members we have, but attract new folks who kind of might be on the fringe but would like to be more involved. So the fact that you guys are here means a lot to me, that you're interested in volunteering or participating or even just listening to what we have to say. So vote for me for STC Florida Chapter President. And
Well,
I guess I will hand it to Jessica. I figured we'd do questions later so we can get through each of these, if that's all right.
Oh, yay. Okay, I haven't done this in a long time and never on camera, so bear with me. I've been a technical communicator, over 25 years, really. I came to this profession not by understanding I was meant for it, but because I took a test, and it was either technical writer, translator, or model. And I'd forgotten all my French, so I figured it was technical writer. And modeling, it's just so shallow. Anyway, and I started as a technical recruiter because for some reason, when you have a humanities bachelor's degree, nobody wants to give you a chance in technology. So I spent a lot of time. I feel like I've been in this career forever. I have to remember it's not as long as I think. But my involvement with the STC has been up and down and intermittent over the last 20 years, mainly based on the viability and availability of a local chapter. I realized I was an active student member. Then I was on the board of the Metrolina STC, which folded into the Carolina STC, but there was those years where there wasn't really a chapter, or it's not the way, we're not all connected the way we are now. So it was really, there was nothing there.
I started in the Metrolina chapter.
Oh, well, hello. I was the person scrounging around for presentations and having a really hard time getting anyone to show up.
In 1988.
Oh, I was in the late 90s. Yeah, or maybe late 90s, early 2000s. Okay. So it was probably more robust back then. We were always competing with the Raleigh chapter, which is now what the Carolina STC chapter is, because they always had these great meetings and we never really could compete. But when I moved down here, I became a member of the South Florida chapter, which folded into the Florida chapter. Well, actually, that sort of folded, and then I didn't have a chapter. And then I discovered the Florida STC chapter, which leads me into why I decided to step up and run, which is the Florida STC chapter in particular. And I've been through the ringer. I find that the more I give to it, the more I get out of it. And we know that that's not always the case. And I've definitely experienced the opposite everywhere in things I volunteered for. So I thought just wanting to be a part of that and to provide that for members, because I've received so much back from this chapter that stepping up is only going to do more for me. So I'm here for me. So, to heck with you guys, vote for me so that I can be better. But that's how we should think about our chapters, really, is what am I getting out of it, and toward those goals, Bethany and I had talked about, and it's really interesting that I had a few goals for my career, and I was saying, no, I don't have time because I need to focus on these goals, and I've been putting them off. And Bethany was very clear, like, we could do them together. That's probably what everybody wants to do. And she's right. I wanted to get certified in the STC CPC.
CC.
Why did they have to make it that? Right? I never get it out of my mouth. I've heard the right. And actually, I've been working on that with Nancy, my mentee, and we've been putting together like a study buddy group for people who want to do this independently. There's a lot of challenges there, and she's done most of the heavy lifting. So that's something that I think could be very helpful. And Nancy just put her the link to it there. And I also, I want to get a resume and an online portfolio up on GitHub. That's where you need to be. And by the way, you need to know GitHub, which I can't figure out to save my life. And Nancy has also figured out. So
I would be happy to add to the GitHub fun if anyone needs another.
perfect.
How does this work?
Exactly. And
I
see,
feel it too.
it seems to be, I mean, I don't know if it's because it's open source and everyone can talk about what they're doing, whereas we're all limited by our, confidentiality club. But these are things we're all struggling with, and why not do them together? This is part of getting out of what you put into it. So that's one of the reasons I stepped up, and I don't know what that looks like yet. We'll have to discuss it. And but that is my plan going forward, is just that I put in more, I get out more, and then that we create a chapter that has that experience for everyone. Because I know the value of it, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really convinced me. I know how important it is to have. And especially now, when this tech comm field was crazy before the quarantine, it's gotten very odd the past 5 years. And then quarantine happened, and now it's a whole new set of circumstances that we're all struggling with. So we need each other more than ever.
Yeah, and the work is not slowing down for anybody. So it's an exciting time, I think, to be in our field. So Jesslyn, you are up next.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Jesslyn Parrish. I've just finished my 3rd year in UCF's Text and Technology PhD program. I have 1 year left to go. Yay, it's almost over. Anyway, I actually did the digital media track in the program, and right at the end of my coursework, finally had okay, I've been doing this because I wanted to learn how the tech worked and how to make it. I actually want to be doing the documentation and explaining to people how it works, because I can actually do that. So I found out at the last possible moment that tech comm was what I was looking for the past throughout many years of my education, but I eventually got there. So I started getting involved with STC. I believe it was at the beginning of this year. I did a presentation with Bethany and Julia and started meeting people in STC and FTC, and it was just, I don't know, everyone probably has their own experience of this, of when, you're going to college, you're doing different types of education, either college or less structured or individual, however you do it, where you're thinking, I'm trying to find my people and where it feels like it's right and where I like being, because I'm an introvert very much. So it's the people, anyway, when I started getting involved with STC, I finally had that feeling of, this is what I was looking for. It's by being around everyone here, the questions I've been asking about how to get where I want to go for the past few years are finally being answered. And in terms of, oh, you'll figure it out, you'll be fine. I'm like, okay, but I know there are specific things, and what are they? And anyway, yeah. And so I got a bit more involved with STC. I work with Bethany and Julia on the communications. Yep, introverts unite, definitely. Exactly. That is how it works. But yeah, so I've been started volunteering with the communications committee. If anyone ever has something they would like on the social media, at the moment specifically Twitter, feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat, because I've started working on the STC Twitter. So send it along to me if you have ideas or suggestions. I would love it. But yeah, so I wanted to get a bit more involved and keep learning and be able to give back and just grow and do something helpful, hopefully, along the way. Yeah, so that's why I decided to get involved and try to run for secretary. And I will say I went with secretary because I felt fell most into my wheelhouse of, I can listen and take notes and keep track of things. This felt like a good starting point for me. So yes, so I'm very glad to be here. I'm thrilled. I'm looking forward to being involved and giving back and learning from everybody. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Round of tiny claps. WC, I don't know if you guys have met WC. He's been around a little bit, especially as treasurer, but he's back again, and we're very lucky.
Yes, we are.
I feel like a bad penny. Thank you for considering me as your treasurer. I'm W.C. Weiss. I'm retired after 45 years as a communicator with Lockheed Martin. And
You were my treasurer.
well, could have been, yeah. And I've been a fellow of the society since 2010. As Lori correctly points out, in the mid-90s is when I became chapter treasurer for the first time. And then I was so excited about the experience that I ran for society treasurer and got soundly defeated in after the annual STC conference that was held in Orlando in 2000.
Does that just mean I'm in good company, WC? Is it also defeated board
It
treasurer?
It means that you are following a well-beaten path. That's what that means. So in my despair, I became chapter president in 2001. That was a significant year for us. That was the year that the active membership program was started. The Gloria Jaffe Outstanding Communicator program was started. We renewed our annual meeting commitment to the University of Central Florida. We started the mentorship program, and we renamed our newsletter from Tech Trends to Memo to Members. And so a lot of the things that we take as common practice found their seeds during a remarkable year with a remarkable board at that point. So excited were we about what we'd done in Orlando that I ran for treasurer again and was elected in 2005 at the society level. I was a candidate for STC vice president in 2009 and got soundly defeated. And but then ran for the board of directors one more time and spent an additional 2 years on the board. Since then, I think it's about 2017, 2018 that I picked up the reins of treasurer again. Being the mailbox chairman just wasn't quite satisfying enough. And so if you trust me with your money, I'll accept your vote.
We'd like to point out there has been zero embezzlement under WC's reign as treasurer so far. And in fact, we've made money and are no longer in danger of going under, which I'm afraid was the case when I was treasurer last at the chapter level. So
Well,
WC's done a great job.
You didn't have enough chapter mergers. That's what's happened.
Yeah.
Is that when we were still spending money on the Winter Park Civic Center?
Winter Park Civic Center. Yeah. What a time. It's hard to imagine now.
I started that.
Yeah, I liked it
That
there.
was about 95 that we started going there.
And it was a great place, but then their prices kept going up and up and up,
They did.
unfortunately.
Darn.
They demolished it.
And then it was gone. Literally
Oh,
gone.
really? Oh, things I've missed.
It's always changing down here in Florida.
Yeah, but Lori, I am impressed with how much you've been around.
She's crossed paths with everyone. It's like
Yeah,
2
exactly.
degrees. It's 2 degrees of separation here.
No, I was
It
going to say
is.
she's one of those degrees. You just connect to Lori and you're connected to everyone.
But
It's awesome.
when WC finishes, I will give you a list, but I'm not running for anything.
I think that was the end of the pitch for WC. Vote for WC for treasurer.
I'll say it's the end. If I disappear, it's because STC meetings and supper here at our house, they haven't exactly been coordinated.
Mhm.
So rather than do a Bethany, I will probably eat in invisibility, but I'll still be here listening.
Excellent. Yeah, the worst thing to eat on camera for me was a salad. I apparently eat salad in a very aggressive fashion. So
Please notice if it'll show up that I'm at least committed to STC in terms of coffee. Oh, it won't show now. Look at
yeah,
that.
you have to maybe you hold it in front of your shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
There, there we
Close
go.
enough to see the logo, I'm afraid. All right, but see,
Oh, there it is. Yeah, oh, yeah, we can
Yeah,
see it.
I care. I care.
Hey,
Yeah, you'll see us here in our active member shirts through the years. I'm not at the Dan Voss level where I have 20 of these, but I think I've got 10. From year one, I was like, I'm getting an active member shirt. So for those who are still new, hopefully there's shirts in your future. If you are an engaged member, you will get points. So look forward to seeing those go out this year. I think next would be Deborah Johnson, who doesn't have to be elected, but will be serving on our board as immediate past president. She sent me a lot of notes about her career, but I think I'll give you the highlights for those who don't know Deborah as well. Deborah has served in chapter leadership, I believe, over 11 years. Including in, I think, just about every position, but most recently as our president. But also, I think she's been vice president, maybe secretary. I don't remember if treasurer, but she also participated in developing the chapter's leadership development program a few years ago. And she served on STC's 65th anniversary committee, attended 5 summits, presented at Wash Lines, and has organized 26 monthly programs for the chapter over the course of her tenure. She's also, as of I believe, Summit 2021, going to be an associate fellow, which is one of the highest honors in the society. So we're very lucky to have Deborah still involved Unfortunately, she's was not able to join us tonight. She's dealing with some personal demands on her time, but we're very glad that she's going to be participating. So if you have further questions, I can send you the notes about the many things Deborah has accomplished. They are very intimidating. I do not have nearly as long a list at this point, but we're lucky to have her. So I think next up is our directors at large. I've got Alex first.
Okay. Thank you, Bethany. I'm Alex Garcia. I was currently I'm immediate past president. I've held pretty much every position that you can at STC Florida except vice president. Yeah. And now first time I'm running for director at large, in which I'm going to be taking on any ad hoc responsibilities that Bethany might think of. So I'm just here to lend my support and also to improve my professional development. So just it's always I can always learn from everybody here, be it from the students or to keep myself in the loop of what's going on with technology or things like that. Professionally, I've been with Lockheed Martin pretty much for the last 10 years. And before that, I was an engineer on the space shuttle. So I have both an engineering background and a TechCom background. At the society level for the last 3 years, I've been on the Community Affairs Committee. And our main thing is we put on the leadership program at the summit. Previously, it was attached to the summit, but the last few years, it's been kind of its own thing right around in the May timeframe. And it's a forum for society leaders at the chapter level, at the SIG level, to learn skills and network. And that just happened last week, and it was successful program. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think several of the people who are on the call now were there. I saw a lot of familiar names. It was nice to see you guys attend and pop up. So I hope you enjoyed the
Absolutely,
program.
it was a lot of fun.
And if you're wondering, Alex, you had I just heard at the board meeting, you had a landmark attendance of 90% of the people who registered attended Leadership Day.
That's awesome.
So you guys did a great job.
And I can remember a couple of years ago, we tried a mixed mode type of delivery where Bethany was there to save the day with a laptop in the middle of the summit. And so I think the evolution of the Leadership Day, I think we're going to continue doing it mostly virtual because it lends itself to a lot of spontaneity and there's a lot more of discussions and everything. So at the chapter level, like I said, I'm here. I bring a lot of experience, organizational knowledge of the chapter. I've been around since I was a student, more years than I care to say. No, but I do have a lot of organizational knowledge. If you ever need to know any of the history of the chapter, I've been around it for it all. So I am here to help with whatever it is needed this year. So.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Very glad to have your
Absolutely.
expertise. Even though I know they're going to be gunning for you to run for the board next fall, they're coming for you. The nominating committee will be there.
I'm sure they are. Yeah.
They'd be so lucky. Last but certainly not least, we have Lori Meyer, who's been serving as our chapter secretary, who's also going to be running for our other director at large position. And I saw Lucy the cat. Oh, Lori, you're on mute. I think I saw Lucy the cat pop in.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Lucy is one of my two cats, and she is also the official mascot of the Community Affairs Committee for STC this year. So, and she wants everybody to know that she's expecting more expensive food, a new blanket, new toys, and if I don't get them for her, she will let me know that she is extremely disappointed. But I've been a member for STC for more years than I like to imagine. And TechCom was not my first profession. I was a public relations account representative for the first few years of my career after college. And our company was bought out and merged, and several positions were eliminated, including mine. And that's when I made the transition. But I didn't know I was going to be making that transition because I had talked to a career counselor, and I still don't know whether to laugh or feel embarrassed during this conversation, because she said, she was looking at my resume and she said, "Have you ever considered technical writing?" And I said, no, not really. I don't have a computer science background or a tech background. I don't have any programming experience. And wouldn't that be kind of dry and boring? And I almost have to laugh when I think about that now, because my career in tech comm has been anything but boring. It's been invigorating and challenging. And today I work for a cybersecurity firm in the San Jose area. And, it really keeps me hopping. It's very interesting and very challenging. People who know me also know that I belong to many STC communities, and they probably wonder why am I all over the place like this? But it's really a wonderful experience to be able to know people from different places, STC, different locations, different communities. Each one has its own personality. And that's actually been very insightful and helpful for me as a leader. I am coming off of a term as president of the Rochester chapter. That was my third chapter presidency. I was president of 2 other chapters before that. And I've held just about every position in an STC chapter. I've been vice president, a treasurer, secretary, all kinds of stuff. So, I really appreciate the broad perspective that I've gotten about leadership. It's been very challenging, but it's also been very insightful. So I'm going to be functioning in a similar manner to Alex, where I will offer help on an ad hoc basis wherever I'm needed. And it's my hope that I can contribute to keeping the chapter strong and building it for a good future.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori. Yeah, I'm always a little intimidated by just your breadth of experience. Lori knows everyone, so if there's anyone STC you come across, I'm sure Lori has worked with them at some point. It's incredible. She's everywhere and does everything. I don't know how you sleep in the midst of it all.
Well, sometimes I haven't.
No, but you always do wonderful work. So I guess kind of just to wrap it up, when you get your email, if you are an official member of our chapter, I hope you will vote. Even though we are running unopposed, it means a lot that you take the time to cast your vote in our elections. Especially, I know Alex worked hard to get a full slate this year, which I think I mentioned earlier is a big accomplishment.
It is.
So it means a lot to us that you're here to support us in the chapter and be part of our community. So thank you to the other people who are running for office. Looking forward to serving with you all. And even those who aren't going to be in office, I look forward to seeing you at meetings and as an engaged volunteer or whatever it is you want to do. We're not here to volunteer anyone what you should do. But we are happy to make the most of your skills or whatever it is you want to do. I think kind of like Jessica was saying, pitch ideas for what you would like to do or like to see the chapter do, because I'm not an ideas person. I'm an execution person. Sorry, that sounded like I'm an executioner. I'm a person who likes to execute on things. This is the hard part about being someone who thinks about words. You try to edit your own speech as you're talking, and sometimes it gets away from you. But no, I'm here to help make things happen. So, feel free to think about what you think we can be doing or should be doing or where we should be going, because it's a time for us to, reevaluate and grow. So very happy to be, with all these fine folks. And I think, how are we right on time? We're right on time for Lori's presentation, which I know is going to fill a nice chunk of time. And then we'll have time for questions, which I think Lori will be happy to answer questions about her presentation. Or if you have questions for any of our, slate of candidates, those will be available as well.
I do need to make one last pitch because I forgot, and you'll appreciate this.
Yeah.
I didn't categorize my Barbies, but the only chance that I got to play with the Barbie dream house, I played with the elevator.
Oh yes, the mechanical pieces.
It was destiny. I was pulling the strings and trying to figure out how the house works. I was more interested in the car. So it made me
yeah, my mom still brings up that I spent more time working with Barbie's car and then setting up her kitchen and reorganizing it. for optimum flow, obviously, of kitchen usage.
Yeah, that elevator was awesome. It had a paddle and everything, and you could make it go up and
It's
down.
interesting. I'm sure a lot of the people who are in our field can look back and you see the seeds of the things that you're drawn to and the things that you value, right? How do things work? How do we communicate how things that work? I think it's a kind of foundational, and no matter where TechCom goes, it's a broad, wide, ever-growing field. There's some stuff that's just core to what we all do and what we care about, which is, that words matter and our message matters. So thank you all for being here. And thank you for Lori. Thank you for Lori. I'm thanking the universe for Lori. but thank you to Lori for being here to present. I think I give you the ability to screen share if you need to.
Okay, let me just,
But if
okay,
not,
let
I'm
me
making
just
you
go
a
back to Zoom here.
I'm making you a co-host as
Okay.
well.
Okay, so let me just share my screen here. And then what we will do is share. Okay, now can you see a slide presentation here? Can you all see it?
Starting. It's starting, but it hasn't popped up yet.
Yes.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Oh, okay. So you're starting to see it then.
Mhm.
Okay, good. Can everybody see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, well, as Bethany mentioned, this was a presentation that I gave to FTC a couple of months ago. And that particular presentation was focused mainly on students and their future in TechCom. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought that the overall message is that our value endures no matter what point you are at your career. So I felt confident that this particular presentation would fit well no matter where you are in your TechCom career. So I hope that will be the case for you. So, and it's really a pleasure and an honor for me to do this presentation. So why did I pick this particular topic? Because number one, our profession is changing, but it also is very grounded. It's not going to go away. So the way we look at things, the way we do things, the way we perceive things will change, but the basic value of what we do will not. So let's take a look at that. If I can get my, now I've already introduced myself, but I started my career in public relations and tech. I'm also an STC fellow and a member of many other chapters. I have an MS in instructional technology from Rochester Institute of Technology. I used to live in Rochester, New York. That's how I ended up going to school there. So I want to talk about this whole topic from 3 vantage points. 1, user advocacy. 2, the concepts of innovation and design and quality, which sometimes intersect and sometimes they don't. And that's both an opportunity and a challenge for us. And 3, the way generations are perceived and how they're defined. So let's start with user advocacy. User advocacy is a term that we didn't really hear a lot about in TechCom until right around 1980 or so. And usability is essentially associated with software use, but usability actually runs through the profession because everything that we touch, everything we use, whether it's hardware or software or any kind of equipment, has to be usable. People have to be able to get it up and running and they have to be able to use it to complete their jobs. But the central focus of usability as a profession or as an interest or as a subtask has typically been aligned mostly with software use. And related to that, user experience or UX as they sometimes call it, that's become sort of a subspecialty. In fact, there's a group that has a UX writing conference every year now. And it's for people who are interested in things like embedded help, tooltips, anything where the information that we provide is embedded into the product as opposed to being documented separately through an online help system or a manual. And that's a very exciting development for us and it presents a lot of opportunities. So when you hear more about UX writers, you can be sure that that's a subspecialty that it's not too late even for us seasoned veterans to pursue and get interested in. So what about user advocacy in terms of usability? Now, you've probably heard this term many, many times where we describe ourselves as the user advocate. In fact, I've heard people say, well, you know, the programmers are interested in putting the product together, product managers want to just deliver it, but we're the user advocate. We're the ones that care about the user. And that's definitely true. We do care. You have to care to be part of this profession. But when I was thinking about that description, the user advocate, something didn't quite work for me. And so I want you to just take a minute to think about this term, user advocate, and what it means to you. Is there anything about this phrase that doesn't sound quite right to you? If you want to put a note in the chat, please feel free to do so, and we can chat about it towards the end of the presentation. But I just want you to reflect on this because it's sort of a treasured concept for us. And it is important, but I found one big problem with this term. And that problem is the user advocate. And what bothered me about this was that, yes, our whole direction and our whole professional mandate is to make things clear and to make sure that our message works for our users. But the word the, that's what bothers me because it kind of creates an otherness, kind of a separation. So over here, all those developers, all they care about was putting things together. They're just playing with code and doing ones and zeros. And, product managers, they just want to get something out. Marketing just wants to, write fancy words about it. But we're the ones that care. And I don't think that that's quite the right place for us to be. Because user advocacy really has to be everybody's business. And I know if I were the CEO of a software company, I would want everybody to be a user advocate from the janitor right on up, because everybody in a company touches a product, either directly or indirectly, and they have to care about that product. So user advocacy is really something that we all have to be. So instead of saying we're the user advocates, what I like to think of us more is the first believers, because we may know more about user advocacy than others. We may have been trained in it. We may have taken classes in it. We may have taken other courses that touch on clarity and, being concise and other things that make the user experience good for our audiences. And we can take that and we can invite others in our organizations to be user advocates. We can be a role model. We can be an inspiration. We can help educate our teams and encourage user advocacy on everybody's part. I think it's not true that, software developers or other people who work on the more technical, the construction side of a product, I don't think it's true that they don't care about user advocacy. They just may not know all the parts of it or how to express it or how it's relevant to their work. And that's where we can play a role. We can be the first believers because we may be the only people that understand user advocacy, but it doesn't have to be that way going forward. So that's why I like to use the term first believers instead of the user advocate. Now, another thing about user advocacy is that we often hear the phrase, know your user for they are not you. And this is true. The people that we write with are not us. We write for X-ray technicians. We're not X-ray technicians. We write for database administrators. We're not database administrators. We write for transportation managers. We're not transportation managers. All the people that we write for, we are not them. So it's important that we understand the work environment that they face, the challenges that they face, the ability of within their environment to succeed. the working conditions, whether they're working on a factory floor with a very low temperature, or whether they work outside in a lot of noise. All of those things go into understanding the user environment, their attitude, their ability to learn, all those things. And that is not our experience. On the other hand, there is one thing. As diverse as our audiences might be, as many types of audiences as we write for, no, they are not us, but they have one thing in common with us, and that we are users also, just like they are. We buy software, we use it, we buy hardware, we go through the user experience, and we can use that to the benefit of our audiences. So I always recommend that people draw on their user experience, because we all have some of it, and it's been good and bad, and it's something that we can teach, that we can learn from. So I recommend think back on your own history as a user. When did you last search for instructions and couldn't find them? What did that feel like? What did you do? How did you feel when an installation failed? Or what happened? How did you feel when you were trying to get a process done and all of a sudden the E message, an error appeared, and you were left totally hanging? You had no idea what to do. What error? Why was it there? Did I do something wrong? Did the system do something wrong? What's the matter? What can I do? Get me out of here. So all of these things, our users all experience them, and so do we. And we can take our own experiences and make ourselves more empathetic to what our users are going through. So I've actually created like a kind of a mini journal of, things that really bothered me about, maybe it was a remote control on a television set that had so many buttons. I didn't know what they were all for. And the documentation had such tiny print and didn't explain anything. That's like, feel stupid. I have an advanced degree and I feel stupid because I don't know how to use this product. And no user should ever be able to be made to feel stupid. So all of that can increase our empathy. So the major takeaways here as far as user advocacy are, number one, we are the first believers. We might be the first or only advocate at the beginning, but we can encourage user advocacy by working with our teams, sharing and educating. So now let's look at three concepts: quality, innovation, and design. And where do they intersect and not intersect? Now, the reason that these terms, I selected these terms to talk about is because they have a history with our profession, not only with our products, but with the profession itself. Now, quality, there really wasn't much of a focus on quality until after World War II, when the consumer economy, especially in the United States, really kicked in. And companies competed with each other for quality. And that's when you heard a lot of advertising that emphasized quality. Zenith televisions, the quality goes in before the name goes on. Westinghouse, you can be sure if it's Westinghouse. Borden dairy products, if it's Borden, it's got to be good. Good, quality, safety. United Airlines, the extra care airline, all of these things. And in the handout that I'm going to be providing, there's a fascinating advertisement by United Airlines about how they emphasize quality and safety. You just do not see that anymore. So I thought that was most interesting. So the history of advertising reflected a quality emphasis, especially in consumer products and services, but also in, a lot of products for industry as well. And safety, things like X-ray equipment, the emphasis on safety and the ability to use the product in a way that was safe for both the consumer and the user. So, I always recommend that all of us in TechComm take some time to examine the history of advertising, because it's a fascinating history. One of the most enjoyable historical pieces that I found was for Maytag washers and dryers. And several years ago, their theme was the dependability people. And you might have heard about the lonely Maytag repairman. He just sat around, nothing to do, and he was complaining. It's those Maytag washers, they're so darn dependable. And So, and you don't hear that today. And I think there's a link between the emphasis on quality years ago and how things were done overall in terms of both manufacturing of the product and technical communication. Because back then, they the options for presenting information were pretty limited. It was pretty much print and television advertising. And I saw a instruction book for a 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air sedan. And I forgot to put this in the slides, but I'll put it in the handout. The presentation of the information was frightfully ugly, but it was straightforward, told you just what you needed to know, not a word more or a word less. And so that tradition is with us. So how has quality been attained? And for the most part, it's been obtained through repetitive work, testing, and repeated failures. If you know anything about the space program, Alex, you may have a little insight about this. But when the Mercury space program was announced, their biggest challenge was how we get that rocket off the ground. And they went through failure after failure after failure. It was just, dismal, but they finally did it. They just had to try again and again and again. And so quality does not come quickly. It's a very repetitive and often boring process. But quality still mattered. And unfortunately, what's happened since the beginning of the 21st century is you don't hear quite as much about quality anymore as you do about innovation. But back in the 1980s, Dr. Edwards Demings, came up with a concept called quality circles, and he had 14 points for quality management. And I've got a reference to this in the handout. Why quality was important, how you attain quality, how you gain insights on quality. And unfortunately, you don't hear about quality circles so much anymore. And I think that was partially because of the increasing financialization of consumer, just consumerism, and the more emphasis on short-term profits, because quality takes investment and it takes time. Innovation, that's another term whose meaning has gone up and down over the years. Now, the Oxford American Dictionary defines innovation as to make changes in something established, especially by introducing new methods, ideas, or products. And innovation was often, it wasn't, the word innovation wasn't used so much, but it was all over the place, especially around the turn of the 20th century. When Thomas Edison finally brought the light bulb to American homes, I mean, that just changed our lives dramatically. It had a global impact, and it was truly innovative, where you could flip a switch and the room would light up. That was just incredible. The same thing with the telephone. The fact that you could pick up a device and hear a voice that was not in your room, that was just incredible. And it was amazing. And we didn't use the innovation word that much, but what incredible innovation, that was. And a lot of the most prolific innovators back then did not really see their work in terms of innovation. They were just trying to make something better. They were driven by curiosity and challenge and a desire to make a difference in human lives. And one example that comes to mind is George Westinghouse, who invented the air brake system that is used in railroading to this day. Now, before Westinghouse came up with this system, getting a train to stop was a very dangerous process. It involved a brakeman who had to go on the top of the train. It was very complex and dangerous to stop a train. He came up with a system that enabled a train to slow and stop in a safe way that was much better for the engineers and the passengers, and put far fewer people in danger. And so that sort of innovation is still part of our lives today. So if you hop on an Amtrak train, you're riding with George Westinghouse. And the same thing as every time you turn the light on, you're turning the light on with Thomas Edison. And so these inventors, they were called inventors, and we don't use that term quite as much today, but they were just looking for a way to make things better. And they often did not want to draw attention to themselves as much as what they were working on. So, innovation today is starting to, take on a slightly different flavor to it. You hear about innovation, for example, like, all of the work that Steve Jobs has done with the Mac and the iPhone, that is truly innovative. When you think about it, that you can carry a phone around anywhere and watch television. Yes, that is innovative. But I think one of the problems is that today, innovation has sort of a glamorous feel to it. And we don't think of Steve Jobs as somebody, sitting in a lab, going through failure after failure, messing around with parts. He's more of a glamour figure than the inventors of 100 years ago were. And so innovation sometimes is thought of as a better way, a prettier way to do something, or a nicer way to do something. In fact, one designer at Apple once said that he would like to make an iPhone that's as flat as a credit card. And I think the question that we have to ask is why? Why do that? Why do we need a credit card sized phone? Where I think it was a little easier 100 years ago to ask, why do we need a better air brake on a train so that the engineer can just stay safe and not fall off the train every time he tries to slow it down? Or, yes, we have a light bulb so that we can see, and we don't have to have candles that blow out, and we have, we can live a better life. So you can kind of see where there's a shift there somewhat. Not that innovation is not very meaningful in many ways. Innovations in medicine are saving lives. Innovations in space exploration. We just got a new rover to Mars, and so there are a lot of wonderful things happening. But there is a risk that innovation can sometimes be seen in a way that maybe is not quite as focused on value. Now let's talk about design. So design is often spoken about in terms of technical specifications like functionality. For example, you design a bridge, you design a road, you design a transportation system, or sometimes it's seen as in terms of aesthetics, visual appeal, making a UI more pleasant, using color to make things more attractive to the eye, designing a page layout so that it's more appealing visually. So there always have been two aspects of design, but once again, the challenge is to understand where the perspective is and what you need to emphasize, what we need to emphasize as technical communicators, because design affects we do too. Information design is probably more the functionality part, where we design something to present it in a way that users can find information, that they can read it with clarity. And then the aesthetic part of the design might be more, color or size, or, the selection of fonts on a screen. But those are two different things. And what we need to make sure that we don't forget is the functional part. Because when I think of design, I think what can help our users find the information and succeed at their jobs. To me, that is the number one priority of design. The aesthetic part has its place, but it's very easy to slip in, get those priorities mixed up. And as technical communicators, we can make sure that that we not only help ourselves to keep the priorities straight as far as what's good for our users, but help others to do so too. And that's another thing, how we can be first believers in helping our colleagues to become user advocates as well. So, when you think of innovation and quality, quality is always possible with innovation, and hopefully those two will always match. But a good question is innovation possible without quality? And that's a question that I don't have an exact answer to, but it could be that some things seem to be innovative, but their quality, the value of their quality is limited. So that's what we just have to be aware of these things and these shifting perceptions and how they affect our work. So my recommendation is when you hear the terms innovation, quality, design, consider the context and keep in mind that these concepts don't always intersect. Maybe somebody talks about, oh, this is a great innovation, but is it going to bring users the quality they need? And the other thing is to achieve the best product that we can, whether we're technical communicators or any other part of product development, we can't be afraid of boredom or failure, because sometimes you have to put up with a lot of boredom to get to the right place for yourself and your users. So the last thing I want to explore is how all of this works across the generations. Now, in the last 5 years, so there's been more emphasis on generational differences than ever before. When I first started my writing career, before I got into TechCom right out of college, I didn't hear much about generations. I was a young 22-year-old kid, and they didn't really care what generation I was. All they cared was that I could get the work done. So they said, okay, here's your job, there's your desk, have at it. They didn't care whether I was a baby boomer or whatever name that my generation was. I was there to do a job. And, since then, there has been a great deal of talk about what the generational differences are. There's been more reference to labeling generations. We've got the baby boomers, we've got the Gen X, the millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of slicing and dicing to figure out, well, what's different about these generations? So, you talk about the digital natives versus the book generation, or the digital natives versus the TV generation, but it doesn't always fit as cleanly as we think it does. For example, the baby boomer generation is often called the TV generation, but what's ironic about that is that I remember as a child, the people in my family who absolutely loved television were my grandparents. They thought TV was the coolest thing going, more than we did. And so, it doesn't always align. And, unfortunately, technology has become a generational flashpoint where, you think in terms of technology being, more in the comfort area for younger people than older people. And I remember a phrase back in the 90s, can you teach my father how to use the internet? And I thought about that, and I thought about my own father. And I think that I would have, if someone had asked me that directly, I would have said, I don't know if I can teach your father how to use the internet. My father can teach you, because my father was in his 50s when he died. But at the time, he was the quintessential early adopter. And I'm very sad that he did not live to see the iPhone and the iPad and all of the other incredible mobile technology that's happened. Because if he had lived when those things came out, he'd have his office all full of Macs. He'd have an iPhone, he'd have the earbuds, he'd have the whole 9 yards. And being, when he got into his late 40s and early 50s, he kind of felt funny because he loved technology, and yet he kind of felt like a kid, and most of the men his age didn't have the interest that he did. So you just never know. You really don't. And I think in terms of my own TechCom career, I'm glad for my father's sake that I did end up in this profession. I think he would be pleased if you were alive today. But what's important here is that you need to yes, there are some generational differences. Every generation has its own experience. And so you can't, not every generation can appreciate exactly what the previous generation did. But you have to be careful. And I see a lot of this. You're going to see tons of these if, as you read about generations. But, they've got a lot of different things here about how this generation does this. They were born here. They have these strengths and weaknesses. And there is some core of truth to some of this, because no generation is exactly the same as the other. They can't be. At the same time, for us as technical communicators, we have to remember that there are things in our profession and in our work that know no generation. Clarity knows no generation. Conciseness knows no generation. Completeness knows no generation. Accuracy knows no generation. That never changes. So while we may see some differences in how people want to absorb information, the fact that kids today, they use Chromebooks in school, which, my generation did not have, but clarity and accuracy never ever go out of style. And that's the one thing to remember. So we have to always keep in mind that every generation has a valuable history and something to contribute. But every generation has its insights, its wisdom, and its blindness. There are things that young people coming out of college now, don't know yet, that previous generations like mine maybe can help give them insight. They, on the other hand, can help give us insight about what it's like to live in a world where they never had any job security, where they never knew what it was like to live in a country where people worked for 30 years before they retired. Live in a gig economy now. People coming out of school, that's all they know. We didn't know that when I was growing up, but we can share these things and gain insights from one another. So it's important to remember what unites us. The fact that we have a common mission, no matter whether we're just starting in our careers or getting towards the end of our careers, what unites us can provide as much insight as what separates us. So we are many. Sometimes we'll find ourselves working with 4 generations, but we are one. And like I mentioned, clarity, accuracy, conciseness, they respect no generation. Their value is timeless. And that's where the value of our profession comes. I just want to mention President Kennedy in my closing here, because he was a hero of mine and he died when I was a kid. And I still miss having him walk among us. He was the president who was leading the country when the space program got kicked off. And he gave what's known as the moon speech in 1962. And I have a link to that YouTube video in the handout you're going to get. And he talked about, we choose to go to the moon and do many of these other things, not because they're easy, but because they are hard. And another thing he said in that speech was, he talked about the Apollo, the rocket. Well, he didn't know it was Apollo then, but he talked about sending a rocket into space. And he said, imagine what it's like, to build a rocket that's, 30 feet tall, that has everything you need to survive in space for a number of days. And imagine what it's like, what we have to do to be able to get that rocket up there, get those people in the rocket back to Earth safely, and do it right, and do it first. We must be bold. And that's what's the mandate for us as well, because we have so much we can contribute, but there are many, many challenges. But whatever we do, if we believe in what we're doing, if we believe in the value of our users, we must be bold. And our value will endure no matter what stage you are. If you're just starting out in your career, everything's before you. If you're a seasoned professional, you still got a long way to go. there's still much you can contribute. And even if you're in the late afternoon of your career, the story isn't over yet. There's a place at the table for every generation, but all of us, no matter where we are, we must be bold. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. Get everything set back up so I can see everybody. I think people are turning their cameras back on.
Oh, okay. I'll stop sharing now. Okay, let me just stop the share
Hey.
here. Okay. Okay.
No worries. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm glad I got to see it, and I liked this version a lot. I know you said you tweaked it a little bit. I think we were going to open it up for questions for Lori. I know we had a little
Sure,
bit of
whatever.
feedback in the chat. I think we were all getting a little snarky about expectations for being high quality and innovative and cheap and fast in our work.
It's that good, cheap, fast triangle I
Yeah.
pointed out. Yeah,
Yeah,
can only choose
that's
two.
true. Yeah, and that's probably not going to go away, unfortunately. But I think I think if we know what those terms mean, what we mean by good, what is cheap and what is fast, and if we kind of understand that, we can make whatever the change to choose. At least we'll understand them.
Yeah, I loved your phrase, quality doesn't come easy. And I was almost going to say quality doesn't come first in the dual meaning of it, meaning a lot of times people
Yeah.
will put innovation first, but also the first thing you put out is rarely the quality you need or want. That's what
Yeah.
you're saying about iteration. So I was just, that's what popped in my head. I was like, yeah, it doesn't come easy and it doesn't come first. Unfortunately,
No,
it has that
it
dual
doesn't.
meaning. So I appreciate your wording.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess
Yeah.
I kind of had a question, I guess, sort of to Lori and generally for those who've gone from being new in the profession or a student, where I think it is driven more home that what you should be doing is high quality. And then once you get in the thick of it, a lot of times there's pushback to focus on time.
Oh, I know. And that's something, if I do this presentation again, I might have to address that. But yeah, I have worked in environments, I've worked on contracts where, the deadline was it. The deadline was everything.
Mhm.
No matter what we produce, it's got to go out by the 1st. And in some ways, if a company, took that position, at least I knew where we all stood, So you just do the best you can within that time frame. But, please don't ask me how long it's going to take me because you already told me the time I have, So all I can do is the best within that time frame. So that's really true. And, unfortunately, everyone likes to talk a good game about quality and, companies still sometimes, like to use it in their mission statements or whatever. But, sometimes that is not the reality, unfortunately. All we can do is make a promise to ourselves that we care about quality and we will apply it in a limited way, maybe, but we will carry it as far as we are allowed to.
So I guess I have a question for you then. How do you approach that when you do have a deadline and you know that you cannot deliver everything they want at the quality you want? Kind of
Yeah.
triaging the work, saying like, well, if I want everything to be quality, not all of this will get done. If I want all this done, all of it'll be high quality. So how do you kind of juggle that? Is it kind of just a qualitative judgment, I guess,
Or cocktails.
Yeah.
or not sleep,
Yeah.
or not sleeping, or something like that.
Right.
But I guess that'd be my question for you,
Well-
Lori. How do you balance that out or make those decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's not always an easy, thing to find the answer for.
Mhm.
But what I try to do first is get an idea of what I absolutely must deliver. So if I have to provide documentation for, let's say there are 6 new features and they want me to document all 6. Okay. And there's not enough time to do the level of work that I want to do. Then where can I compromise? Should I have fewer screenshots? Should I focus less on, the page layout? Should I forego examples. You know, what can I do at the least loss to the customer to get this done? And how can I exercise what is within my power? For example, I can make sure that every sentence is as clear as possible, that, you know, there are no spelling errors, you know, that at least it's presented well to the customer. And so if there are 6 features to document, but I have some leverage as far as like, well, can I document 4 of them and defer the other 2? Do I have that choice? Because that'll give me a little bit more leverage. So I need to find out exactly what I absolutely must do, and there's no options and no exceptions. Once I know that, then I have to figure out what areas can I throw the most emphasis on. It won't provide everything that we want to do, but how far can I go? And I think that's the thing. How far can I go? And I'll go that far, you know. And I try to also tell, you know, when we're talking about project plans, you know, if there is an emphasis on timely delivery, if I know that there are going to be compromises, I will try to be as honest as I can with my project team, saying, okay, we've got 6 weeks to do this. This is what I can do. I won't be able to test as exhaustively as I would like because there's no room in the schedule for it. Or if you want me to provide an example for each one of these steps, I won't be able to do them. Or I can't provide all the screenshots. I can't do exploded views. I can only do very general things. So sometimes it's a matter of degree. You know, I can do this, but not this. So, you know, those sorts of compromises, you know, which aren't ideal, but that's often the reality that we live with. But I know that I still know that I care about quality. I want to do my best. And sometimes I will write notes to myself. If I could do this my way, this is what I would do. And I don't share it with anybody.
Make a note of, this is how it should be done right. Commitment to your
Yes.
craft.
Yes.
What's become a real common phrase in where I'm working now is an MVP,
Yeah.
a minimal viable product.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Jessica's
what I
like,
was
yeah.
thinking. I was like, the minimal viability. I was like on my mind the whole time while you were talking.
Yeah. I know that's, yeah. And I've heard MVP. And sadly, I've heard it more in the
Mhm.
last 10 years than I've heard
I had
earlier.
never heard it until like a year ago. And suddenly it's
Yeah.
like, let it go, let it go.
And see, we're on period of performance according to the fiscal year. So they're just like, oh, fit whatever you can in right now. We'll get it on the next period of performance. And you're like, you don't want to let it go at some point,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I will say this just as something I've learned. I was thinking about through the generations, where I was as a young writer versus as a more experienced young writer.
Seasoned.
I'm sorry.
Seasoned.
The appearance and filters are going in my head. I'm like, I look like a Disney princess, I feel like. But I have learned that lipstick in the low light makes you look like you have punch mouth. So I was looking at myself like I looked like a character. But one of the things that I've learned, especially as moving more into the senior role, is to give myself more flexibility around publishing and how, if it's online help, how it is tied into the product. I know when
Yes.
I came to my current company, you know, you have to take the temperature of a place when it comes to quality versus time versus money. You know, what are they like? And sometimes, you know, you can't, you get on the job and you have to publish immediately and you don't get a sense of it. Sometimes you have a few months to see what they're really like. And I know, for example, I think I've said this before, but I made sure that I was not connected to the code because I knew that I might not have time to do the quality, but I'm committed to it. So I could go back and do it later, but not if it required another development build, you know, and that,
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those things you don't think of in terms of building quality in, but you're like, okay, they're not going to listen to my argument. They're not going to hold up the build to make sure that the doc is better. I know that, you know, you
No.
sort of feel that that's going to happen. So I need to divorce mine. I sort of had to, I can't remember what argument I made, but I made it work. I said, it's better to not have them
Good.
connected or something, because I knew that would be how I would be able to do it iteratively and build in quality over time, if not on the first release. So it's one of those things you don't think of as a young writer.
Jessica, we have a follow-up question for
Yeah.
you. What does it mean to not be committed to the code? If you can
Oh,
explain what that means for those who
sure.
don't build documentation that way.
Sure. When, for example, I have help links, but they go to a website. They don't. The help does not live in a piece of the code. For example, the code is not all one big. Oh my goodness, my words have gone like one big blob, and like the help files sit inside the code set so that they're all delivered at the same time and have to be built at the same time. Meaning, how that works in a project is. The final developers cannot build the final product until I give them the help files. So my help files have to be done when they do the final build to go out live. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
And
that's what I have to do too.
Linked, not integrated.
Yes, linked, not it. That's why she's president and I'm running for VP. I'm not explaining this. I know exactly what I mean, but it was one of those things I sort of couldn't really say why I was saying it, but it was this idea that I knew I couldn't get quality at the same time. Like I was going to have to be able to have the freedom to go back and make my own builds. Now when I publish the help, I publish it on my own. So it could be when the final build is done, or 2 weeks after, or sometimes a week, depending on the time I have to do it. So that's part of it.
Well, hold on. I was
Yeah.
going to say goodbye to Lori Corbett. We lost her, but she said goodbye in the chat. She's gone. I'm sorry. Now you're the only Lori. So Lori, go on. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, that's okay. All of this is really interesting. And, Jessica, I know exactly the pain that you're talking about as far as like separating from the build, because I finally convinced our development team to what they call containerize the documentation so that it's not like right in the product. So it gave me a lot more time to make last minute corrections. So yeah, that's true. And I think another thing that I didn't mention, but I think is important for us as technical communicators to consider is that, quality is not perfectionism. In some industries, yes, things have to be absolutely right. But when someone says that they're an advocate for quality or user advocate, that's not the same as being a perfectionist. Those are two different concepts. And I'm far from a perfectionist. If you look at my email threads at work and you see the typos in them, I'm not a perfectionist. But, I think quality is kind of a larger mission than that. So, if you're interviewing a technical writer and they say, I'm a perfectionist, that may be good, but it's not necessarily the best thing.
Yeah, I'll say I was a perfectionist who lost that as my primary goal once I started. I think it was from bachelor's to master's, where I was like, yes, I'm not actually achieving anything here by just trying to pursue some sort of abstract concept. Do we have questions from other folks about quality or generational experiences?
So
Or
Lori,
thoughts?
in the chat, I had brought up the right to repair advocacy movement that's going on right now, where
Okay,
companies are
yeah.
making such disposable products, right? And they're not allowing you to really get in and fix your own product, or they're kind of designing products to be thrown away.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest example right now is John Deere dealing with the farmers. They can't, for generations, farmers have been able to work on their own tractors, and they have
That's
so
true.
many
Yeah.
electronics now that they're not given the access to work on those farm equipment, and they're having to spend a lot of money on these tractors several times over they would have in previous generations. They would have done that once every 20-30 years and kept it running, but now it's they're becoming more and more disposable. So what can a company do about that to keep their profit high, but at the same time think of the user?
Yeah.
Where's the balance on that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's also a very tough question because I know a lot of companies are kind of moving in the direction of replace, don't repair. And it's tough because the replacement often is is very, very expensive, and sometimes even can be prohibitive.
Exactly.
And it does raise the question about, so where does quality fit in with them? How does that change the meaning of quality? Because if you have something that breaks down after a while and then the manufacturer says, well, it's not working anymore, buy a new one, there's a message there, and it's not necessarily a good one, and there's probably, and how do we, if we're documenting products that do that, how do we, I don't know, where do we fit in there?
Where do we draw the
Because-
line, right?
Yeah.
I would say
Yeah.
a great example of this would be the smart appliances.
Yeah.
I don't have to buy one, but I will do everything I can to hold on to my old fridge, because
Yeah.
the chip will break and then the whole fridge breaks. My 20-year-old
Yeah.
fridge is fine. It just needs to keep things cold. It doesn't need to connect to my phone.
That's true. And yeah, and I don't need Amazon to know what's in my refrigerator and then help me with my shopping list. And that's exactly what a lot of smart refrigerators are doing.
Oh my
And
God.
that-
I was at the STC conference and this woman was talking about, well, I should be able to do this. And I was like, you're insane. And I didn't want it, but I just thought I couldn't imagine, like, why would I be giving, why would I be
Just because
sending the
you can
content?
doesn't mean you should.
Good.
What would you say, WC?
I said, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely.
I will say some of that is probably generational. Not to stereotype generations for some folks. This idea of the inevitable.
Yeah, right.
People are like, I'm already a product. I might as well just roll.
But see,
with it.
not everything has to be on the Internet of Things. It's like that.
Yes,
Not
I agree.
everything needs to be on the cloud. There is place for analog something.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's important for us to study the history of product development and product promotion, and the history of the consumer movement in the United States, because it is truly a fascinating history. Things have changed. Some changes have been very good, but others, like this, the whole thing with red hair and the fact that we tell people to toss things out as opposed to, replace, fixing them, those are troubling trends. And, some things now, for example, smart refrigerators, smart TVs, smart toilets, those are considered innovations. And that's where I'm starting to have a little bit of trouble with that concept of innovation as they apply to smart toilet.
The toilet's a step too far.
Yeah, yeah.
TV makes sense.
So that's why I think it's important for us to understand the historical perspective on these things, because the products that our ancestors wrote about and documented, the products that our grandparents wrote about, are very, very different from what we're looking at now. And the march of time can't be stopped. At the same time, I would feel very sad if we cheated ourselves out of the wisdom that we can learn from what, the way things used to be, and the opportunity to stop and think, what is it about this product, the way it is now, that's good? What do we keep and what do we change? Like, for example, I don't know if any of you remember the whole business with in the soft drink industry about the new Coke. Back in the 1990s, Coke and Pepsi were the top soda manufacturers, and they were at war with each other for market share. And Pepsi was starting to, hone in on Coke's dominance in the market. And Coca-Cola didn't like that. And they ran taste tests and people were choosing Pepsi. Oh my gosh. And then, so Coca-Cola decided that they were going to change the recipe. What they did, they threw out their traditional recipe for Coca-Cola that had been around for almost 100 years, came up with a new Coke that was supposedly designed to taste more like Pepsi. It bombed. It didn't work. They threw the baby out with the bathwater, because they had a good product, but they decided it wasn't worth it anymore. They were going to change everything, and so they brought back old Coke. Now new Coke went away because it didn't work. So that's an important lesson learned. You know, sometimes you can't just take things and change them for the sake of change. And if you look at corporate logos over the years, you know, a lot of companies change their logos just, well, time to change. And they came up with stupid logos that were ugly and people didn't like them.
Well, when
Like
they brought it back,
Sherwin-Williams.
wasn't it classic?
Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah,
Coca-Cola
classic Coke.
Classic.
Yeah, they put yep, they put it right on the can. Yeah. And yeah, and I worked with a woman who loved Coca-Cola, and she was so relieved when they brought it back. So, you know, so much for change. But we just, you know, there's a lesson to be learned there. You know, what's good? You know, there are some things that are worth keeping. And that it's important to know the difference. What do we need to change versus what can we hold on to that's good, that's lasting, that's grounded?
Lori, I liked your characterization of us as the first believers. I hadn't heard anything along that line before. What led you to consider that? Because I think it's particularly insightful.
Well, I think fortunately in the company that I'm working for now, they gave everybody on our team an opportunity to give presentations. They had Friday lunch and learn sessions, and I was invited to participate. And I was trying to think, what can I help? I mean, I'm the only writer in here. Everybody else is either an engineer or product management. So I'm the only technical writer. So I need to take advantage of this opportunity to help people understand about what we do and why it matters. And, you know, I thought about the user advocate phrase because I heard someone say, you know, I'm sick and tired of talking to, you know, the techie people and the developers. I'm going to forget about them and I'm just going to go talk to our users. I'm the user advocate. And it's like there was almost something angry about that. And I think and I thought, yeah, we want to be user advocates. We are user advocates, but there's something missing here. I don't want to be standing off. Oh, I'm the only one that cares about the users. You guys don't care, and like I do. You know, I didn't want that, you know. Yeah. So that's and I thought maybe I'm not the only user advocate, but I'm the first one. And that's where the first believer idea came up.
Yeah,
Excellent.
we did have a question in the chat from Destiny.
Oh,
How could I, as a new technical writer, get an SME or SME on board with designing for quality and user ease?
oh, okay. Well, that's been a challenge for me too. And one of the things that I do when I'm approaching a developer for the first time, you know, introduce myself, things like that. But just to say, you know, I'm going to be responsible for documenting this, and I have to make sure that our customers understand, you know, how to configure single sign-on. They have to be able to do this as administrators. So I want to make sure that they can read this and understand it. So first of all, could you show me? Could you give me a demo? And if I ask for a demo, that usually lights a fire under them. They like showing what they're doing. And sometimes I found that their demos, they start to devolve into all kinds of technical terms. But, you know, what I typically do is I just listen, and then I'll ask them, okay, now back here, you said this. So if the customer forgets to do that, or if they try to skip that step, what's going to happen? Or you said this term relay state, you know, I'm afraid, you know, that term is not familiar to me. And it may not be familiar to some of our admins who may not have a programming background. They might have an IT background. They might not have heard of relay state. So I want to make sure that they feel comfortable in understanding that term. So can you just explain that to me? And a lot of times they're willing, once they know why I'm asking the questions, and once they get an idea that, you know, I've done some homework in advance. For example, I might read up on something even if I don't understand it. And I'll say, you know, I was reading about this, so it sounds like this, but I need you to help me understand this other part of it. So that gives them an idea that I care about the topic. I care about what they're working on. And that really kind of opens the door, and they're more willing to spend time with me. So.
And it can change.
And
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to add something, but I'd love to hear from you more than from me. I hear from myself all the time.
Yeah, and I think, because developers, at least the ones, that I worked with over the years, they're proud of their work and they want people to appreciate what they're doing. So, I try to come in with that attitude, and help them to understand that we both have the same goal, to put out a quality product. This is my part of it. That's your part of it. So I need to understand your part of it so you can understand my part of it.
I'll say relationship building helps as in all aspects of your job. So once they know that you're, you know, not wasting their time and are going to make the most, but that helps. I've also offered a gift of a Visio flowchart of whatever it is they're doing that they can then use for other people.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
like, let me make
I
a
did that.
Visio. About to say, I think we've talked about this. It just
Yep.
it's sort of a peace offering. Not that you're coming in a hostile
Oh,
way, but
yeah.
here, let me gift you something that you can use to help communicate with other people too.
Exactly.
And
Like
it
I
takes that
spent
off their plate.
I spent several months with engineers telling, okay, I'm documenting your process. Let me
hmm
make a flow chart. How does this thing go from one end of the depot to the other? Like how does it get back
Yeah.
onto the field, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like I
That's a
said
great
in
idea.
the chat, like I always joke with my SME, like if we document this correctly right now, you're not gonna have to be paying state income taxes wherever we set this up, right? Because he'll be there training the trainer for months upon months. But if we do it correctly now, he won't have to do that.
Yeah, that's true. And the other thing I try to help developers understand what's in it for them if they can work with me and help me get clarity on the product. Because if our discussion yields things of insight to them that can help them fix a problem with something, that is one less bug in their Jira queue that they don't have to fix. And that saves them time. So I try to help them see the value to them as well as to myself.
I think we've talked before, by the way. I see we have a question about Visio. We've talked about doing a Visio demonstration from those of us who are Visio evangelists. Maybe that'd be something to have on for next year. I love making Visio
Yeah.
flowcharts.
That sounds great.
Oh yeah, they're fun. Or horrible. I know people that hate making them. So sorry, I'm not saying you should make them if you don't like making them. Everyone has their own particular skill.
Oh, I
What
was
I
traumatized by having to make a Visio diagram, but it still is a great skill. Even as I was sweating and shaking and thought I was going to die because I was asked to make one, I was consulting on site and she was like, oh, you could just do a Visio. And I was like, sure I can. I'd never done it. And that was in front of a client, and I how they didn't see the sweat stains coming down my arm. But I did it.
And
it's a
so
very
to kind of make it clearer for everybody in the chat. So Visio is being used kind of like a Kleenex type of. It's kind of branded, right? So it's a flowchart maker, right? So Visio brand flowcharts, let's say.
Mhm.
So you make flowcharts within the Visio program, but in colloquially you'll hear it say, "Oh, just make a Visio."
It's like PowerPoint in that regard.
Exactly. Mhm.
Yeah. It's what happens
or
when you use
Googling something
or Googling something.
Xeroxing
Right. The
something.
name, it's verbed.
Yes.
I've often heard them called decision trees as well, because you do a lot of
Yeah.
if yes and then if no, and you go according to the various.
And then they can
what
get
could happen.
fancier if you're working within PLCs. Also, if you're an engineer
Mhm.
making actual decisions for a command to follow.
Yeah.
Get really nitty
Yeah,
gritty.
logic
Oh,
gate
yeah.
is what they call them.
Wow.
It helps you sort out the word salad. It takes
Mhm.
what's just a bunch of gook that you're hearing, and you put and it also helps them clarify what they're saying, because they don't even
Yes.
realize what they're saying.
Exactly. Process flows is one of the biggest things that we do
Mhm.
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make big things.
And for us in
understand.
TechCom, getting the workflow down
Mhm.
is crucial, because our customers need to know the order of what they're doing. And so a process diagram or something that you can do in Visio. I like Visio too, and I think it can really help. Yeah.
I think it just speaks to us, right? It speaks to how we
Yes.
our structure sometimes.
It
I
also
thought this-
frees you up to focus on, I'm sorry, to focus on the actual words.
Yeah.
I find, Bethany and I have had some deep sharing sessions about those things you send out into the world and just want to crawl under a rock and never share with anybody, but you had to send them out because the words, it's just not, the language is not adequate because you were just, for me, I was just trying to figure out the workflow. I literally was learning it as I was going, and as I was writing it, I was having to figure out, well, what is the next step? This isn't clear at all. So a flow chart can help you just, okay, I know what the steps are. Now I can focus on how to best present it, where to put the screenshots, how to write the words, as opposed to doing all of that at the same time and trying to figure out what the step-by-step is, which is,
Yeah.
compromises the quality, Lori, to your point. You wind up putting a lower output because just
And the more I know in software, I found this to be really important over the years. The more opportunities I have to actually get my hands on the product itself and put on it, it provides incredible insights. I find, I break builds, I make mistakes, I leave things out, I get error messages, and I go through what a lot of our administrators go through that I have to write for. And so that helps me be more empathetic. So one of the things I always do is ask QA, please give me access to a build that I can go in and just play with the product, break things without messing up your work, and just let me pound away.
Let me break stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Is very
and
much.
it's also a way to earn respect on a team.
Yeah.
In terms of how do you convince a SMEs? Destiny, your question, I thought, oh my gosh, I could write a 20-page paper on how you convince me. Like I was so much to say about it, but if you can show that you can use the product, it really will help you prove, this is terrible, but prove your worth. They'll be like, oh, I don't have, this isn't someone who's dumb. I that's awful. But sometimes we're not thought of as being very technical or very astute. And if you can say, no, I'm not asking you everything. I'm asking you on step 15. I already did the other 5 steps, and then they know, oh, this person's really sharp, and they'll respond, and then you can show them the value of what you're doing, and it's
Right.
helpful. And you speak their
Yeah.
language. You're speaking their language because you're using the product. So
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of had some questions sort of about the generational side of things. I recently said to someone that I'm so glad I'm over 30 because it's been a huge relaxing point in my career. I'm not having to prove myself so much as when I was in my 20s because people are like,
Yeah.
you young whippersnapper. Not that they won't give you work. They will. But people question your perspective because it's so short term compared to long term at that point. So I know, Laura, you were saying that a lot of ways we're not that different across generations, especially when we're in this field for the same reasons, doing a lot of the same work. But do you think or have you seen bias towards, I guess, how valuable someone's input is early, mid, or late career?
Well, fortunately, I haven't had any conflicts with that, maybe in the last 5 or so years. But I think at either end of the generational scale is where a lot of those problems occur, because people just coming out of school, for example, are seen as, that they're just, they don't have enough experience. They think they can do anything, and they just don't understand how hard life is and all this other stuff. So that's at that end of the generation gap. Over here on the senior side, it's there's ageism, and here in the Silicon Valley where I live, that's a huge problem. Age discrimination is rampant out here, and it's tough because there's this idea that, number one, older people aren't interested in technology. Their learning process is slowed down. Their reaction time is too slow. They can't keep up. They have memory problems. They don't understand the value of the tools that we're using now. They don't like iPhones. They don't want to use tablets. They just, so, and unfortunately, what's sad about that is that, yeah, there might be a little bit of that on both sides of the scale, but most people coming into our profession, no matter what level that they're at, are, they're here because they want to be, and they care about the work. And young people can be incredibly mature and insightful. And older people can be incredibly, savvy and open-minded, and, you just never know. And if you ask some people, what age do they feel? I feel in some ways, I feel very weird because sometimes I feel like I'm no generation, because sometimes I feel like I'm 90 and other times I feel like I'm 15, but it doesn't matter to me how old I am in terms of my work. It just doesn't matter. I don't have any perceptions about, back in the good old days or anything like that. It's like, I do understand that there are some trends that may not be the best for everybody, but, I don't care. My generation doesn't matter. I don't feel like I'm better or worse than anybody else. So it is tough though, because that's why I need people. I always tell people, when you read about, well, millennials are like this, Gen X is like this, take all of that with a grain of salt, because you've got some people that feel like I'm all those generations in one person. So.
Well, because in a sense, you lived through all the same years I have, Lori. Just
Yeah.
we were all here for them. So I think that's a
Yeah.
good point.
You know what I've noticed though, is I was almost going to say with the younger people that I work with, I've often, which made me feel like I was
Kids these days, Jessica, am I right?
Although it is fun to be the person who can't keep up with the technology when I used to be explaining it to everybody else, but it comes from that. I think it's just becoming an adult. You want it to be useful. I don't have time. I'm busy. Our lives get complicated. I don't have the energy or the brain power to just jump in and learn something unless I see its use to my life. And I've often found that, I don't know if it's necessarily the age. I'd love to know your perspective. I find if they're a gamer, this is a question for you, Bethany, but the folks people I work with who game online, their perspective on technology is so different. Like, they will put up with so much more because they live online. Like, when they get off work, they go play World of Warcraft online. And I'm not
Oh,
man.
man.
I don't want to, and I'm like, okay, like their whole lives are set up, you see their offices. And I just think, wow, that's a different perspective on what's usable and what's easy and what's quality.
Well, if I
Yeah,
could point something
absolutely.
out, earlier on this call, we were, I think most of us, having a delightful time changing our Zoom backgrounds and adding filters. So I think there's that spark within all of us that wants technology to be fun, and we're always there hoping it'll happen. But I think the older we get, the more we think technology is not fun, it's work. I think that's
Well,
part of it.
the thing about gamers that I learned this from an IT guy. Gamers have very powerful equipment. They want all the power they can get. So they typically have Windows machines with 32 to 64 gigs of RAM on them. And, I was thinking, sometimes I wish there were a gamer who controlled the money in my company so I could get a more powerful machine. So they appreciate, and the tool that I document is extremely big and complex. And, finally I was able to get another 8 gigs of RAM on my machine. But, I appreciate the fact that gamers appreciate power in a machine too. They don't care about small and slim. They wouldn't use a MacBook Air if you paid them all the tea in China. They want the power. They don't care how heavy the machine is. And actually, that's kind of what I need too to use our product to document it. So that's one thing I appreciate about gamers.
Oh yes, when you want to know what to buy in a laptop, talk to your coworkers who game.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
It was very helpful.
Yeah.
I will say, playing games online, whatever that looks like, which is a very broad spectrum nowadays, I think is a great way to keep in touch with what you do and don't like about technology, even if it's not relating directly to the product you do. And also just being online. I talk about user interfaces a lot just outside of my work experience because I'm looking at them all the time. My husband, who knows nothing about technology, still brings up that one game where he's like, you complained about the user interface for like 30 minutes. I'm like, well, it was very bad. It was not user friendly. I couldn't read the text.
For a random example, I mean, everyone, I'm sure a lot more people than before the pandemic played a lot of different games during the pandemic. And at one point I thought it would be fun to get my mom to play Animal Crossing. We lasted 20 minutes. She hated the premise. She was sitting there going, why am I an indentured servant to a raccoon? Wait a minute. So now my taskmaster is about what do I care about her? So we had that experience, and then I got into playing and got her into playing a like 1920s themed object finding game on that was app based that she could play on her iPad called June's Journey, and we were both addicted now. It's like I like this one is much better. This one, it suits my needs and it's enjoyable and there's a clear point.
Yeah.
There you go. Future STC meetings, come to us for game recommendations, no matter what you like.
I can tell you one of the funniest.
Yeah,
One of the
I
funniest
will say, by the way, we are at 8:30, you guys, just so you know.
sorry.
No, I'm not saying we have to cut everybody off, but I just wanted to say that was officially, I think, when our program ended. We're having such a great discussion, though. I'm not trying to cut anybody off. But I know I see Alex has to drop soon.
And actually I do as well. So.
Yeah.
I was just going to share a funny gaming
Last
story.
thought from Jessica to close us out. How's
Yeah,
that?
it was just one of the funniest things that I mean, I laughed for 10 full minutes. I was going over to see my friend Neil. He was going to fix my computer, ironically. He came to the door and he said, and he's about 10 years older than I am. So I think he was mid 50s at the time. And I'm standing at the door and he said, hold on, I got to go check on my chicken in the oven. And he ran to the back room, all the way at the back of the house where the kitchen was right there. And he was running. And I was like, Neil, the stove is over there. That was when that game came out on Facebook called Diner. And I was like, where are you? And he was in his back room, like putting the chicken in the oven because he was playing the game. And I just, when I figured it all out, because he did like, oh, I'm going to burn the chicken. And he ran. It was one of the funniest, weirdest technology experiences I've ever had in terms of generations. And, so he would be an example of someone who's older, but would still love the game. And I just didn't get it at all. I was like, that sounds like work. And I don't even like doing that in real life. Why would I do that?
That's where you would lose me. I'm sitting there,
But it was so funny.
And collect money. I like this. That's what I aspire to in life. Let me play that game.
But I was standing there with my laptop like, what's happening?
I will say I took a really good survey on what things you find valuable, creativity, motivation, and that sort of thing for gaming. So if anyone's interested, it's a really good survey that breaks down what you look for. Julie and I have talked about this.
Okay.
I have it up. I'll put it in chat.
Oh, Julie's got it. If that interests you,
good.
but as a way to talk about technology and how we engage with it. But Nancy brought up that there's an FTC game night, and I'm going to throw it to her to talk a little bit about that. That will be, I'm sure, I believe they're planning one coming up in the summer.
Yay! The FTC game nights are with the students at UCF. Yeah, we play a lot of what I would say are easy games that no matter what age you are, maybe like Among Us might be, there's a bit of a learning curve with that one, but like a lot of these games are like just really easy and fun to play for all ages. And so it's like, yeah, if you want to get that gamer perspective, that might be something cool. Also, you get to hang out with like the kids who are up and coming, future technical communicators. So it's like, share the knowledge,
So the guys I work with just stop laughing at me and making fun of me because I don't know what they're talking
Oh, bye, Destiny. Thank you for joining us.
Bye. Thanks for coming, Destiny. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, it's a great time with the FTC kids, though I do feel very old hanging out with them, and I know I'm not that much older, but it's enough. So yeah, I guess we'll share whenever the next event is for those who would like to experience the other side. So I think I'll just close us out. Thank you, Lori, so much for your presentation. I can't remember the last time we had such a lively discussion after a presentation, even with a small group. You really, I think it brought a lot of key insights that none of us had thought of it before. So, thank you again. It was wonderful.
Oh, you're entirely welcome. I do have a handout, Bethany. I just haven't made the PDF yet, and I'll make a PDF of the slides so you guys can all have those too. So I'll send those to you, and you can share them with the team.
I will post them out to everyone.
Yeah, well, thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone, take care. Enjoy the long weekend or whatever your weekend will be like, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the June meeting.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Great.
Thank you, Lori. That was
Thanks.
fantastic.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.